Hey there, Creep Cole. We're going to be doubling up. We're not just wearing the same clothes as last week.
I've been wearing this for 7 days straight.
Woo! 7 business days? Or...
Yeah.
Stanky.
Hey, we're talking about Panic Room. A little bit more lighthearted, I guess, than Okja. Not heavy themes, though.
I mean, it's still like a
Straightforward thriller.
Straightforward home invasion
Thriller.
Heavy themes of diabetes.
Yeah. Heavy themes of Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
All over this motherfucker. Anyway, continuing with Alphabet Roulette, we are now on P, and we're talking about David Fincher's Panic Room.
Pour some peak Panic Room.
Oh,
Jodie Foster, Kristen Stewart, Forrest Whitaker,
Jared
Leto,
Dwight
Dwight
Yoakam.
Yoakam, and I feel like that's probably enough there.
That's all the people that matter.
Yeah.
So I had seen this movie, I think, once before. I'm a massive David Fincher fan. I think he's still, despite Mank, my favorite director. And I, for whatever reason, for many years was like, yeah, but Panic Room just doesn't look like it's a real Fincher movie. And so I just I watched all of his other movies and just kept skipping over Panic Room. And then eventually I went and watched it and was like, that was pretty dope. But even Fincher on his commentary talks a lot about how this is not his usual kind of movie, and that he just wanted to
make a straightforward thriller.
He wanted to make something that was like a popcorn Friday night date movie that people could go to, have fun, guessing what was going to happen next and all that, and have it be a tight little thriller. And also he had just gotten off of Fight Club, where he said he had to shoot 800 different locations and was working with 1 million people. And he was like,
this is the Fincher
one location.
bottle episode.
Yeah, and in classic Fincher style, he way overcomplicated the entire thing for himself and turned it into a complete fucking nightmare. But it was a really good commentary to listen to.
You think the movie it's a nightmare?
No, he was saying that the process of making it was a complete nightmare.
I heard you had trouble getting to that commentary. So what happened?
Yeah, so as you guys know, because I talk about it with most movies that we watch, that what commentaries are available for. I love commentaries, and David Fincher does some of the best director's commentaries, and he does them for all of his movies. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking to do a Fincher rewatch, do it with the commentaries, because he does not give a shit about what he says or what he talks about, and he just tells it straight. But anyway, this commentary for Panic Room is on YouTube if you want to check it out. Problem is, whoever uploaded this thing in multiple locations where I found it, and this is on me for not buying the Blu-ray or whatever, they had made it so the first 15 minutes of the commentary were actually the second 15 minutes of the movie, and then the next 15 minutes were the first 15 minutes, and then after 30 minutes, it just continued normal. So there was that. So I was like, I have to figure that out, because I really wanted to listen to the commentary. Then on top of that, I was like, oh, I'll, see if it's streaming somewhere online so I don't have to rent it. Couldn't get that to work. So I did that for half hour trying to figure that out. Then I was like, fuck it, I'll just rent it. Well, for whatever reason on my Apple TV, it's it's only available to buy for $12.99 or whatever. Well, then I went on the Apple TV app on my laptop, and it was available to rent. So I was like, that's really fucking weird. So I rented it for $3.99 on my laptop. Played it for a little bit, and they had subtitles for every language except English. So I was like, well, I'm not going to watch the commentary and not hear what the fuck is, not know what's going on. I need the subtitles. So then I was like, well, I'll try, since I purchased it, I rented it, I'll shut it off on my computer, go on my Apple TV, and play it from there and see if the subtitles show up there. Well, my Apple TV is just going, stop watching on your other device. Stop watching on your other device. Didn't matter what I did on my other computer, signed out of everything. Didn't matter. Wouldn't play on my Apple TV. So I bring it back up on my Mac, go into the accessibility settings on my Mac, turn on closed captioning, and it finally puts subtitles on the fucking movie. And then I plugged it in with an HDMI cable. And then on top of that, then had to watch the time as I was listening to the commentary, and then wet 15 minutes.
Go back to the beginning.
Switch it to the right section. And somehow I fucking made it all the way through the thing with the commentary, and it was awesome. And so, yeah.
Sounds like a mess.
Wow. That's what I got to say about that. That's a nightmare I put myself through. There was no reason it had to be that difficult.
Yeah.
I could have just watched it.
That's that.
I will say, although it's not his typical subject matter, and I don't know, that because he does do a lot of branching out. Fight Club was down and dirty, and obviously Seven was a very noir, and Gone Girl, but then outside of that, Social Network is very different. You know what I mean? But anyway, he does step out, but this one still kind of has his signature style where it is very dark. and very gritty throughout the whole thing.
And literally dark.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rewatching this, I felt like it totally felt like a Fincher movie, like 100%. And I think from what he was saying, it was more just, it was people's reaction to this movie based on coming off of him having come off of Fight Club. And the way this was marketed was from the director of Fight Club with Jodie Foster from Silence of the Lambs. And so everybody went into the movie expecting it was going to be... Oh, and the director of Seven. So everybody went into the movie, I guess, expecting
Something
Seven, Silence of the Lambs. And when they got this, more... I mean, it's brutal in some parts, but more tame, just like home invasion thriller. A lot of people walked out like, what the fuck was that? I was expecting like the most fucked up shit I've ever seen. And he was like, well, maybe just let me do what the fuck I want.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But originally...
it's good.
Originally, the movie was supposed to star Nicole Kidman and Hayden Panettiere as the mother-daughter team-up. Hayden Panettiere ended up having to drop out. I think she was working on something else. So Kristen Stewart was
around the
brought in.
time it would have probably been Remember the Titans, maybe?
Sounds about right. So she dropped out. Then Nicole Kidman exacerbated a fracture that she had from Moulin Rouge underneath her knee, and they had already shot for like 8 weeks. So, and it was right before the writer's strike was about to hit. So the studio was like, you need to find a replacement right now, or we're going to have to halt the production on the movie. So then Foster was directing a movie that had Russell Crowe in it. He got injured on that movie, so they had to postpone that movie. So she had enough time to flip back over to Panic Room with 1 week to prep for the movie. And she was just like, yeah, I got it. I'm good. Let's do it.
She knocks it out.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of Jodie Foster movies, but goddamn, is she good?
She's incredible. And on top of that, she found out 5 weeks into shooting this that she was pregnant. So she's pregnant for most of the shoot. So then Fincher had to figure out stunt doubles and all that stuff because he was like, yeah, I didn't want to. He was like, I really wanted the movie to get made, but I also didn't want to kill her unborn child. So
yeah.
A lot of the heavier stuff is really good stunt doubles in this movie. And then on top of that, Kristen Stewart was only like 11, 12 years old. So
she puts in a really solid performance.
I think Kristen Stewart is a great actor. And, it's just like Robert Pattinson, where it's like once they got past the Twilight shit and made all the money off of that, and everybody kind of like let that hating on that die down, everybody was like, oh, these people are actually really talented.
Right. Kristen Stewart has won an award that I think like no American has won in like the last like 4 decades. Some like French like acting award.
For that Diana movie?
I think so.
The award.
Yeah.
But because of switching out the actors, they actually went in and reworked the characters and reworked the script. And originally the way it was written was for the mother character to be a lot more like distant and kind of like helpless. And it was all kind of geared around Nicole Kidman having a much more like dainty kind of like graceful performance.
I can't see Nicole Kidman as dainty or any of those things after seeing Killing of a Sacred Deer. I just think aggressive hand job.
Aggressive hand job. Yeah. That's actually her middle name, Nicole Aggressive Hand Job Kidman. And
are you Kidman?
Kidman. And Fincher actually said that it worked out a lot better because as soon as they saw Kristen Stewart and Jodie Foster together, they were like, oh, they both have that similar like tomboy, like, because they cast Kristen Stewart because she reminded them of a young Jodie Foster. So when Jodie came in, they were like, perfect.
Yeah.
Then they had to rewrite the characters to be less like distant from each other and
be more like a close relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, and make the Jodie Foster character a lot more like self-sufficient and strong.
Yeah. So if you don't know what this movie's about, Jodie Foster's character and her daughter, the mother being recently divorced, move into a house. The house just happens to have a panic room because the guy that lived there had millions of dollars stashed away there, and he wanted to keep it all safe. He was like an eccentric recluse, and within like their first 2 weeks of being there, they are home invaded. And so what do? They go into the panic room.
And they click the big red button that says close door, and then they hang out in there.
Unfortunately for them, the burglars are trying to get into the panic room.
Because that's where that safe is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we have a very tense, what is it, like 90 minutes-ish?
Yeah, it's not super, super long.
It's quick, but it's almost tension throughout.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the Fincher hallmarks that you get right off the bat, I mean, everybody talks about the shot, which is the the long shot through like the kitchen and the house, and it's all mostly CG stuff, and that's a lot, similar to what he did in Fight Club with a lot of the stuff with Edward Norton walking around his apartment and things. And it gives the camera this feeling of like being able to go anywhere within the house, which is contradictory to what's going on with Foster and Stewart, where they're trapped in this panic room, but the camera has this freedom to like go anywhere through walls and all this. So tons of digital effects, even down to things like the first time, because it happens a bunch of times in the movie, when somebody drops something on the floor and it slides into focus in front of the camera, so that you go, oh, I need to remember that for something in the future. The first time they did it, I think, was like with Kristen Stewart's med bag or something. They did 100 takes to get it to, because it's Fincher, to get it to slide in front of the camera into focus properly. And Fincher was like, I'm never fucking doing that again. We're never doing it again. And his writer or whoever was like, there's another scene coming up in the script where we do the same thing with a gun. And Fincher was like, here, take the gun, get it 3D scanned. We're doing it digitally. So then all those shots after that is like a digital gun and digital stuff, digital cell phone sliding toward the camera. And because of how darkly lit this whole movie is,
it gets away with a lot of stuff.
It works for the most part. He even criticizes like when it's going through the kitchen, he's like, we really shouldn't have smoothed this out as much as we did. He was like, you can really tell that it's computer generated. He's like, I wouldn't have smoothed it out as much as we did, but we had to, work with the technology we had.
I wonder if this would be cooler in black and white.
Well, he originally wanted to have the whole first half of the movie take place completely in the dark, which made me think maybe somebody read that, and that's how the idea for Don't Breathe, or the Outwaters, but I was thinking Don't Breathe is a home invasion that has a lot of it that takes place in the dark. But yeah, he was just like, the audience isn't going to be patient with me for half a movie that takes place in the dark. But the amount of shit that's going on in this movie, I mean, you can tell why it was a fucking nightmare to make, on top of all the stuff that I already said. You have a ton of digital work that needs to look pretty seamless.
Like that whole entire scene with the fire from the propane tank.
Yeah. And then you have, on top of that, the security cameras that are in the panic room. So they had to shoot pretty much every scene twice because the lighting conditions, because they shot using real surveillance cameras, and those are really sensitive to infrared, so they see really well in the dark. So to get the right look, they would need to film the whole sequence in their regular lighting setup and then move all the lights out of the house and film the whole thing again with the surveillance cameras and make sure that all of the editing and the cuts matched up. He talked about how, like, because they wanted to have one of the lights flicker after the explosion, they thought it was a cool idea until they went into the edit and realized that with a flickering strobe light like that, it makes it impossible to, like, edit, because you want to make sure that the rhythm of the flashing light is correct. So sometimes they would edit it and they'd be like, oh no, now it looks like the light's on for too long. Now it looks like it's off for too long. And having to keep track of the continuity of how often it's flipping between the surveillance and inside the panic room. They had 4 different panic rooms built so he could film from all different. The entire house is a set.
Yeah,
that was built over the course of like a couple months.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of work for what seems like a pretty small movie.
Yeah.
And he talked about how like he pre-visualized like most of the movie ahead of time. And he was being told by other directors, they were like, do not put this much preparation and planning into it ahead of time, because it's going to make it a fucking nightmare if anything changes on set or anything unexpected happens. And he was like, yeah, and that's exactly what happened, is I way over prepared for it. And then it just made it a nightmare to pull it all off the way that I wanted it.
Wow.
But he's one of those directors that just like is
once he has his vision, he's locked in.
Yeah, and he just needs to make sure that every single detail is exactly right, which means a million takes for everything until he gets the right performance. A lot of it was just having Kristen Stewart take after take after take in the 6 hours that she was there, because he wanted to make sure that her performance came off as on par with Jodie Foster's, which it does. And yeah, he was like, I don't want you to look bad next to the Silence of the Lambs, like Academy Award winning actor. So we're gonna keep doing this until you get the right take. But yeah, how did you guys feel about the movie as a whole?
I've seen it a few times. I think I saw it when it was like on pay-per-view back in the day. And
Panic Room on pay-per-view.
I think it's fun, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good, straightforward thriller. It's kind of Hitchcockian in that way, where it's like small and contained. I think the performances are great. I mean, really, I don't like Jared Leto, but I just don't really like Jared Leto that much.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, I remember back in the day when Leto was in this and Fight Club and like
Requiem
doing
for
30
a
Seconds to
Dream.
Mars and Requiem. I was like, dude, I fucking love Jared Leto. Like I remember being super into him, and now I'm just like, he has a fucking like cult sex island, and he's like today I just saw a post that was like Jared Leto is just climbing the face of a hotel today for no fucking reason, and it was just him just climbing up the side of a hotel just
Crazy dude.
to be a weirdo.
But I mean, even outside of that, I don't think his performance is particularly good in this.
I mean, I do like seeing him having to be kind of like a scumbag trust fund guy who is all about, like Fincher talked about how he wanted to have that character who he's like, yeah, these guys who become criminals who have just always had money, they're obsessed with this idea of like street cred and like and all this, and he was like, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and that was basically the character that he wanted to portray there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Forrest was actually originally asked to direct the movie because he had directed. So Fincher said that was stressful too, working with Whitaker, Foster, and someone else on the movie.
Yoakum.
Yeah, who had all directed their own movies. So he was like, yeah, it was. But he said it actually made it easier because he has some pretty funny quotes in his commentary. And
How did you feel about it?
I mean, I think this movie is great. I've seen it 2 or 3 of the times. There were a couple things that I was like, I didn't remember until we had elapsed them. I was like, oh yeah, I remember the twist when they're in the panic room is that she gets sick because she's diabetic, and I had completely forgotten that. But once we got back to that point, I was like, oh, that's right, she gets diabetic, that's the reason why she's looking for sugar the whole time.
that scene when she's having the seizure and her like, toes are curling.
Yeah.
Harrowing,
Yeah.
and great performance. And also Stewart said that she has since then, like to this day, she gets male fans coming up saying how much they love her feet, which is very creepy because she was very underage in that movie.
It's fucking disgusting.
But that's that's people. Fincher, his quote when he was talking about this whole thing about how like it was actually nicer to work with other directors because they didn't really like ask too many questions and stuff. He seems to just hate actors. He seems to feel like it's like just do whatever I want, do what I want you to do exactly as I want you to do it, and don't ask questions. Like to him, it seems like he is like the director is the guy with the vision and the thing that matters, and everybody else just needs to make that happen. His quote was, "The relationship between directors and actors is mostly you holding out the back of your hand for them to sniff, so they know you won't hurt them, like a dog."
All right.
Yeah, so he was like, a lot of it is just like convincing them that the things you're having them do are for the benefit of the movie. And he said a lot of the time it'll be like, have actors run through a million takes, and then it's because in his head he's already visualizing how he's going to cut it together. He'll show them the cut together scene and they'll go, oh fuck yeah, I totally get it, like that works so well the way that you cut it. He's like, yeah, no, I knew that from the beginning. He just wasted everybody's time by making this such a big deal. But everybody on this was pretty professional from how it seems. But in terms of the over preparedness, he said, I'd rather be prepared and bored on set, which is what he said really the vibe on set was everybody was just super bored because everything was just crazy technical. He said, I'd rather be prepared and bored on set than hemorrhaging money and looking like a fucking moron. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to be going way over budget because I didn't plan properly and wasting a ton of money for this movie that's already on the verge of being put on hold. So
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'm just going to over prepare so that we can get this thing fucking done. And then in terms of Jodie Foster being pregnant, he talked about how that's why partway through the movie you see her switch into a sweater, black sweater, partially to hide her baby bump. But he also had a funny comment in there about how he was like referencing an old Robin Williams stand-up quote where he was like, the titty fairy had done its work for the day, because he was talking about how like a lot of the movie is her in a tank top. So it's a lot of Jodie Foster looking real bouncy.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, when she put on the sweater, it's when I decided the titty fairy had done its work for the movie.
Yeah.
We didn't need it anymore.
That's funny.
Yeah. I don't think I had ever seen Dwight Yoakam in a movie having known who he was. And he spends most of this movie in a mask. So even throughout this, I was like, I don't think I know what Dwight Yoakam looks like. I know he's a very famous country singer.
Country singer, yeah.
And I know he's been in other movies. And
he has. He's a bad guy in something. I just cannot put my finger on it.
Fincher saw him in Sling Blade with Billy Bob Thornton, which I've heard is amazing, but I haven't seen it. But yeah, he is such a fucking scumbag in this movie.
Yeah, great voice too.
It says that he is in Wedding Crashers.
Have to check it out. I have to look it up.
Is he?
Look into
Yeah.
it.
I can't think of who he is.
It says
He's the
in it.
wedding. He plays the wedding.
It says that he is in it. He is Mr. Kroger, apparently.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Kroger.
Old Mr. Kroger.
Yeah.
Weird.
Like Chad.
Chad Kroger?
Yeah.
Chad Lowe?
Rob Lowe.
My favorite part, though, was when Forrest Whitaker just turned straight to camera, and he was like, "Save the panic room! Save the dream!" No, you have that nice little, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie at this point. I think we've talked about most of what we're going to talk about with this movie, but recommendations?
Yeah.
Recommendations?
Yes.
I recommend it. Watch it right now.
It's on Tubi.
Watch it.
Don't do what I did. Just go to Tubi and watch it with ads. Do it the easy way. But if you want to listen to the commentary, buy the Blu-ray. But yeah, we get that little bittersweet ending. Well, not really bittersweet, just that kind of Forrest Whitaker gets his comeuppance at the end because you think he's gonna escape, and then he does the right thing by going back to try to help him. He ends up blowing Dwight Yoakam away, and then doesn't get the money in the end because the cops get him, and then you get that all the papers flying around in the air.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of audiences were pissed that Jodie Foster was not the one to kill Dwight Yoakam after everything she had been through, and Fincher was like, well, too bad. That's not the story we were telling, because in his mind, that would be too far for her character to go. But a lot of people just wanted that sweet revenge moment, and he was like, no, I think it's more like character interesting for the characters if Whitaker is the one who, like, all throughout the movie has seemed like maybe he's a little bit on the fence about how he obviously is on the fence about how fucked up Yoakam's being throughout the movie, and at the end decides he's going to go back and make sure he does the right thing, and because of that he loses the money and gets caught by the cops. So I like it better that way than if Jodie Foster had just shot him, because to me that would have felt,
Too straightforward.
even more conventional than the rest of the plot of this movie really feels.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't say it's my favorite by a long shot of Fincher's movies, but I also don't think it's bad. I do think it's a really good movie. So.
Recommend from all of us. We're gonna spin the wheel of endless possibilities for
you
some.
spin me right round, baby, like a wheel of endless possibilities.
Full Q movies.
I didn't think you were gonna get there, and you got there at the end. I really liked that quite a bit. My Q movie is Queen Millennia.
Yep, mine's Queen of the Damned.
And mine is Q, the Winged Serpent.
All right.
Serpent turf.
Not looking forward to any of them. Go ahead, John. And spin that wheel.
Gotta spin the wheel, we gotta spin the wheel, we gotta spin the wheel, we gotta spin the wheel. Oh, God. Queen Millennia.
Okay.
That's 3?
3 in a row.
Damn, the hat trick. Nice. All right. So
Well,
that's what
John,
we're
if we
watching?
weren't spinning this wheel obviously 1 week apart each time, I'd start to think maybe you'd rigged it.
I would start to think that too. Anyway, if you haven't already, then check out our regular episode where we're talking about Reign of Fire and Waterworld. Should be an interesting time.
I'm a water boy in a water world.
We should have watched Waterboy.
Dude, I'm so down. We got time. Anyway, thanks for checking out this episode. We'll see you next week.
Keep it creepy.